Hello, coming to you from the exquisite city of board gaming, Omaha, Nebraska. Welcome to the Out of the Dust podcast. I'm your host, connoisseur Bryce. Tied in with the popular recurring Out of the Dust geek list on Board Game Geek, the Out of the Dust podcast is a bi-weekly podcast that is focused on re-exploring games we played that we hadn't previously played in a year or more. Why did the game get dusty? Why did you decide to dust it off? How does the game compare to how you remembered it? Are you likely to play it more often in the future? These are the questions that we're interested in examining on Out of the Dust. This week on the podcast, Ep71. On the Out of the Dust segment, I'll bring Nusfjord Out of the Dust, and a contributor will dust off Summoner Wars Master Set. On the reaction segment, I begin a multi-part series on the current state of affairs of the controversial publisher Tasty Minstrel games. On the What I've Been Playing segment, I review Tang Garden. On the Obscure Bryce Games segment, I review Speakeasy Blues, and we wrap up the episode by continuing my review of the BGG and my own top 5 countdown in 2010 with the number 4s on the list. I had a chance to bring Nusfjord, designer Uwe Rosenberg's worker placement game of Norwegian fishing, out of the dust recently. I last played this game for publisher Lookout Games 2 years, 1 month, and 6 days ago when it first came out. I thought it was merely okay then, but wasn't enamored with it nearly as much as some of my friends were, including my friends from the Speakeasy podcast, who, if I recall correctly, named it their Game of the Year that year. It just didn't stack up to the other meaty Uwe games, I thought. But when a good deal from a local seller came along recently, I decided to take advantage of it and give the game another try. That other try was in solo mode, which was better than I was expecting. Uwe's games still don't have the most interesting solo modes, but they're getting better and getting to the point where it feels like both a fun and rewarding experience. I was able to see how the different parts fit together better in this most recent play, and I'm feeling confident about teaching it to my wife soon and having it received positively. In the meantime, the game does reside more positively in my mind now, and I'm glad I gave it another shot. I had a similar experience recently with Rekholt, Uwe's Icelandic farming game, and need to remember that Uwe is in my top 5 designers list for a reason, and to stop doubting him and make sure to give his games a couple of tries when they first come out. He's earned and deserves that consideration from me. Let's see what a contributor brought out of the dust. David Fox, username Quaid, brought Summoner Wars Master Set out of the dust recently. He last played it 6 years and 11 months ago and currently rates it a 7.5 out of 10. He writes, I do struggle getting heavier 2-player games played, as my wife much prefers lighter. I don't have to think too much games. However, my son is approaching his 10th birthday and can put up a decent opposition in many games now, especially where there is a luck-based outcome determinant, like dice. Yes, Summoner Wars hits on a 3-6, but I missed 2/3 of my attack rolls in our first game, though that was a good thing as he won a swingy game. The dice have been fairer since. Anyway, Summoner Wars is an excellent 2-player strategic card game into which an astonishing amount of work has gone to balance the factions, although the benders are still naff. Still impressed despite the long break. Thanks for the contribution, David. I acquired the Summoner Wars Master Set big box in a math trade last year for a good deal, but haven't gotten it to the table yet. Your review reminds me I need to do that still, because the game does have a lot to recommend it, and I think it easily remains Plaid Hat's best game. Reaction segment time. This week on the podcast, I'm going to kick off a multi-part investigation to the once respected publisher Tasty Minstrel Games, a publisher that has, over the last several years, slipped into a controversial classification, and if things continue to tread the way they are, they may find themselves labeled with a fraudulent label by the community before too much longer. First, some historical perspective. If you asked hardcore gamers 5 years ago who their favorite companies were, and which were the most respected, Tasty Minstrel would have appeared on many top 5 lists. Thanks to the Orleans Deluxified campaign, their name became synonymous with quality and beautiful productions, and their future Deluxified campaigns like Yokohama and Crusaders became can't-miss events. But when later campaigns like Deluxified Gentis were plagued with dramatic delays, questions started to arise about the healthy state of TMG. Currently, TMG has 5 outstanding Kickstarters. In order for a most recently funded, we have Deluxified Emperor's Choice, which successfully funded November 8, 2019, with 713 backers pledging $70,395, estimated delivery date of October 2020, and an update on July 3rd in which delays to estimated delivery promised due to unspecified issues with Belfort and Luna. Dragon's Interest, which funded successfully June 14, 2019 with 374 backers, pledging $22,130, with an estimated delivery of April 2020, a last update on June 30, saying printing is complete and Ocean Voyage of crates will commence by July 15th with Yokohama Deluxe. Deluxified Yokohama Duel, which funded successfully February 22, 2019 with 2,802 backers pledging $221,582 with an estimated delivery of April 2020, last update on June 30th, which was identical to the Dragon's Interest update. Deluxified Luna, which funded successfully November 30th, 2018, with 1,636 backers pledging $125,998, with an estimated delivery of September 2019. An update on July 10th in which Seth Jaffe, designer of Crusaders, a longtime public face of TMG, says he will no longer be posting update for this campaign and that he's asked Daniel, the president of TMG, to make future updates. According to TMG, the games have been sitting in a Florida warehouse for several months now and are waiting for a vague shipping issue to be solved before being shipped out. And finally, and most egregiously of all, the Belfort Anniversary Edition, which funded successfully October 19, 2018, with 2,741 backers pledging $150,265, estimated delivery of July 2019, an update on July 10th, and the one before that about shipping issues were also identical to the Luna updates. A more recent identical update to both the Luna and Belfort campaigns on July 17th came from the president of the company, acknowledged the delays, claimed a new shipping decision had been made, and promised fulfillment starting in early August. In full disclosure, here's my personal connection to the projects. I am a backer on Deluxified Luna, with all of the add-ons and on the hook for roughly $100 on that single campaign. I have an unpaid FLGS pre-order for Emperor's Choice, and as a result, I've been following along closely on those two campaigns. I know people who are involved in all five, though, and a combo Belfort-Luna pledge is very common. I've done research into the other campaigns I'm not personally involved in to provide as complete a picture as possible. Next episode, I'll go over a detailed summary of the issues, though in a nutshell, as this initial overview suggests, the issues have to deal with unacceptable delays, poor decision-making, and uncertainty of the current status of publisher employees, and who will be communicating in the future. This week on the What I've Been Playing segment, I'm going to tell you about Tang Garden, the new lavishly produced and freshly fulfilled Kickstarter tile-laying game for publisher Thundergriff and designers Francesco Tastini and Pierluca Zizzi. The high price tag ultimately led me to pass on this game, but it was one I filed away to try again later if I had the chance. That chance came along when I was able to borrow the library copy from Spielbound, Omaha's local board game cafe, for a few days to organize and try out. Did I make the right decision in passing, or do I now have not backing regret? Well, here's how it works. Players are garden designers trying to most impressively build their contributions to the garden for the Emperor. They will do this primarily through traditional tile-laying mechanics. Lining up the various elements of the garden like rock, stone, and water on each side of the tiles is not required, but will score players advancements on elemental paths for doing so, or coins, which are points in this game. Instead of adding an element tile to the board, players can spend their turn adding a decoration instead. This is accomplished by drawing a certain number of decoration cards and choosing one to keep. The decoration card kept dictates which decoration goes into play, and there's some set collection involved for end-of-game scoring. Players also control an official, which has a special ability, and at certain times during the game, when all of their tracks reach certain trigger points, the player can place their official's mini in the garden on an eligible position. Orientation is important here, as looking at particular aspects of the garden will earn the player additional end-of-game bonus points. When enough landscape tokens have been placed, or when one of the tile piles is depleted, the game ends and the player with the highest sum point tokens, set collection points, and official points wins. At the end of the day, there's nothing revolutionary about this game except for its stunning table presence, but it does achieve very successfully in striking that delightful zen feeling of play it was aiming for. It's a very pleasant gaming experience, and I found myself really getting into the artistry of placing the tiles and decorations, and really cared that my officials had the best view possible when I placed them. I'm not sure if it'll make my top 10 of the year, but if a lot of titles wind up getting delayed, it may by default. In the meantime, since I didn't back it on Kickstarter, it goes on my wish list because I do have Kickstarter not backing Regret this time. Evidently, there are some dice add-ons and exclusives to increase the variability of the game even more that will make acquiring everything for the game more difficult post-retail. Also, in the meantime, I'm glad Spielbound has a copy in their library. I could see this being one of the first games I introduced to my groups when we start meeting again someday. Obscure Bryce Game segment time. This week on the segment, I'm going to tell you about Speakeasy Blues, a Prohibition-themed dice placement game from publisher Artana and designers Adrian Adamescu and Daryl Andrews. Designers with quite a few credits to their collaborative names, but best known for the hit Sagrada. This was an Essen release a couple of years ago, and the historical theme and dice placement mechanics were an attractive enough combination for me to put it on my wish list. I picked it up on sale at Amazon for less than $20 earlier in the year, and it didn't take too long to get to the table. The game has flown under the radar since its release and is only racking up a handful of plays a month currently. It came close to being a game only I played each month I played it, in fact. But should this game have been getting more attention? Well, here's how it works. Players take control of rival speakeasies. Viticulture, Mamas and the Papas style, these speakeasies give each player a different combination of starting resources. Each of the 10 rounds begins with an event resolving, the most important of which are contests that reward players with bonus points at the end of the game for achieving various set collection goals. The main part of each round revolves around the dice placement mechanism. There are 5 pairs of different colored dice in the game that all the players share communally. 3 of these pairs begin each player's turn already occupying 6 of the 13 total dice placement spots. The player whose turn it is will choose one of the pairs of dice already on the board, roll them, and add them to the dice pool off the board. Then the player will choose one of the off-board pairs and place them on the board in either order they wish, and perform the actions immediately. Most of the actions involve set collecting historical personality cards, item cards, and crime cards. These cards are collected in one of the 4 tableau spaces on each player's speakeasy board. When the 4 spaces are filled up, players have to start stacking new card acquisitions on top of older ones, with the caveat that only the card abilities of cards on top of their respective stacks are active. Personality and crime cards enhance action spaces, provide immediate or once per round effects, or provide end-of-game bonus scoring objectives. Item cards all provide end-of-game bonus scoring objectives, and there are potentially a lot of points wrapped up in those, but only if they are on top of their respective card stacks at the end of the game. Another action space provides Hooch, which is used to enhance actions in conjunction with certain personality cards. At another set of action spaces, players can gain one of 3 different types of favor tokens, the majority holder in each type of which earns extra bonus points at the end of the game, a collection of which grants immediate cash in the game, which is used for purchasing the item cards. Another set of action spaces grants special tokens, which can be stockpiled until used later to perform an action space twice, or change a dice face to the one desired. A final action space, the Soirée, activates a particular icon on each top card of a player's stacks to gain additional cash and reputation, which is a required cost on many of the action spaces and card effects, and the final amount of which also contributes to endgame scoring. So ultimately, we have a point salad game that revolves around mostly a lot of different types of set collecting opportunities. I like set collection, so that works for me. I like the interesting decision-making inherent in set collection games that encourage a player to acquire the various portions of each set at the most opportune times. And the use of communal worker placement dice to foster that in Speakeasy Blues is a fresh and innovative idea. I also really like the tableau manipulation element. Instead of constantly adding new cards to an ever-growing tableau, players add cards to an ever-changing tableau. That's really cool, and trying to manipulate the timing of which cards go where and when for maximum endgame scoring advantage is the best part of this game for me. So the theme is a win for me, the mechanics are a win, and the experience is a win. Speakeasy Blues is a fun game, well worth what I paid for it on Amazon, and one I'm going to start showing around more often when the opportunity presents itself. Because this isn't a game that should continue to exist in obscurity. Speakeasy Blues is a unique experience and deserving of a look from anyone who finds any part of the game intriguing. This episode, I continue my countdown of both BGG's and my own top 5 of 2010, with the number 4s on the list. Since there are a couple of crossovers on our list, I'm taking a look at the 6th highest ranked game on BGG from 2010 today, Alien Frontiers, the modern classic dice placement game from publisher Clever Mojo Games and designer Tori Nyman. Tori has only designed one other game since then, the respectively ranked Pay Dirt, but has invested most of his time, apparently, in a host of Alien Frontiers mini expansions. I own this game, but it's not often played. It's not great at 2, and much more interesting at 3 or 4, though those counts naturally take longer. The game still occupies a unique niche in gaming libraries because of its distinctive vintage art style and still solid mechanics, but I wonder if the game has fared as well as it has over the years because of its significance to board gaming history. Together with another game that will appear later on this list, it helped to establish the genre of dice placement games. But even more significantly, as one of the first Kickstarter successes, it helped make that platform a reputable place to invest in the idea of game potential. With how much Kickstarter has come to occupy in the board gaming production and consumption chain, that latter significance cannot be understated. My own personal number 4 game from 2010 is the Sparschestadt from publisher Z-Man Games and designer Stefan Feld. In the pantheon of Feld games, the Sparschestadt is a middle-of-the-road Feld game, which still makes it better than 95% of the games out there. 10 years later, remains one of the most unique auction games in existence. The placement of the bitter meeples is so deliciously tactical. I love how every single card purchase is so important, and the decision to buy or not has ramifications not just for the potential buyer, but for all the other players as well. I love the tight economy and how the 5 coins you get at the beginning of the game might be the most you ever see at one time. I love how low scoring the game is and how every point has to be struggled for. I love the feeling of elation that comes from completing a big contract and knowing you've either taken the lead or are right back in the thick of things. It's interesting to note that, until Queen launches their new line of Feld City-themed games, the Sparschestadt is the only one of his games that has ever been re-implemented when it was reprinted as Jorvik from Stronghold Games. The Karlsparcher expansion is one of the best expansions that has ever been released for any game ever, and the inclusion of both sets in the Jorvik re-implementation makes the latter game the choice to go with for anyone needing to decide between the two. The Viking theme doesn't make a whole lot of sense with the mechanics, but I do find the transition from the Speicherstadt turn-of-the-century German theme to a Viking theme endlessly amusing, and the inclusion of the expansion, the re-implementation, does mean I've played Jorvik more often in recent years, but I still own both, mainly because I'm a completionist, and did find myself dusting off Speicherstadt to play online at Yucata with my online group recently, which turned out to be a great experience. Well, that will do it for episode 71. Thanks for listening. Feel free to join the Out of the Dust Podcast Guild at BoardGameGeek.com. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Out of the Dust BGG. Leave a comment at the Guild. PM me on BGG under user handle Radagast14 or user handle _Lee14, or email me at radagast14@CenturyLink.net. And join the Out of the Dust conversation yourself at our monthly geek list at BGG. Alright, play me out, Ananda!